I'm Anna,
I'm Jessica.
and this is the Paranoia Pair. Oh, and this is it's kind of dark. The Vampire of Dusseldorf.
Doofenshmirtz Evil Incorporated from Perry the Platypus. If you haven't watched
Mhm.
Perry the Platypus,
No, it
no,
was
Phineas and
Phineas and
Ferb.
Ferb.
If you haven't watched Phineas and Ferb, it's a good show. It's got some good songs in it.
Okay, so Peter Kürten was born on May 26th, 1883, and he was the third out of 13 children.
Jesus.
I feel like that should be an illegal amount of children. I feel like there should be a cap. There's got to be at a certain point,
I think 10 should be max.
like there's a point in having children where you have too much. Like you're doing a disservice to your kids by having more.
But you know that they must have a happy sex life.
As a poor boy growing up in Germany, he lived in a one-bedroom apartment and he faced regular abuse by his alcoholic father. And
13 kids
yeah,
and 2 parents in a 1-bedroom.
in a one-bedroom.
Where'd they get the privacy to even make babies anymore?
There is this mom and I think it's her husband or her boyfriend, and they have 6 kids. It just gave birth to her 7th, and they were living in a one-bedroom apartment and they got kicked out.
Is this that
The Jenkins.
Yeah.
Yes. And now they're living in hotel rooms.
And they had like their kids sleeping in the kitchen floor.
Yes, and they have their 10-year-old who is taking care of their baby in exchange for the mom doing her chores. And it's the mental toll it's having on that 10-year-old. I feel so bad for all the kids involved.
I thought I seen something that the dad left or they broke up.
Yeah, they broke up. The dad refused to get a job because he also has other kids besides the 7 with his wife, with his ex-girlfriends. I think he has like 2 other kids and he has no involvement in their lives, and he doesn't get a job because then he doesn't have to pay child support.
Could you imagine breaking up with your wife and then having to pay child support for 9 kids, 3 different women?
Mm-hmm.
He's never having money.
That's insane.
Yeah, I wouldn't.
No. So his father also had no problem beating his wife and the other kids. He began to show his own violent tendencies at a very young age, or probably around 5 years old. He formed a very unhealthy friendship with a dog catcher who lived in the same building as him. He helped this dog catcher drown 2 puppies just for fun, and afterwards he started injuring countless animals with knives.
Oh.
This is how it starts. Peter was a loner at school. He performed poorly academically, and he was constantly teased by other children. They thought he was strange and distant, and Peter quickly withdrew himself, obviously, if he's getting bullied. Peter was 8 when he ran away from home after his father had once again assaulted his mother, and he managed to live on the street for about 3 weeks. And he fended for himself by stealing, and the police eventually caught him and returned him to his parents. He claims that around the age of 9, he pushed a friend off of a raft as they played in the river. And then when another boy jumped in to try to help the drowning friend, Peter held him underwater until he suffocated.
Did he die?
Yeah, he drowned him.
Makes sense why he doesn't have friends.
He was never charged with these alleged crimes, though. And at the age of 14, he was apprehended for his first criminal act, which was arson. Arson usually led to violent crimes, and in Peter's case, that rings true. In 1894, the family moved to Düsseldorf, and in 1897, Peter started his training in the same factory his father was working at. In the same year, his father was imprisoned for a year and 3 months for sexual assault against his eldest daughter.
Oh, no.
By Peter's late teen years, he had begun to form a sexual interest in women, and his interactions with them would not be one of innocent curiosity. In 1899, when Peter was 16, he had killed a pig, and afterwards he had choked a girl in the forest. He then stole all the money he could find in his household, plus approximately 100 gold marks from his employer, and ran away from home. In today's money, this equals about $13,591.
Jesus.
Yeah. He moved to Koblenz, where he began a brief relationship with a sex worker who was about 2 years older than him, and he was arrested and charged with embezzlement, breaking and entering, and was imprisoned for only 2 months. After he came out of prison, he met a much older woman named Miss M. He moved into an apartment with her and her 16-year-old daughter.
No.
During that time, they both engaged in various sexual practices where he slapped and choked her, but with her consent. They were forced to split up though because, um, like it was kind of getting out of hand a little. Peter wasn't happy about it though. He broke into the apartment multiple times to threaten her. He was sentenced to prison several times for crimes like burglary, theft, and drunken disorderly until October of 1900. Afterwards, he lived for a short time with his mother, who finally divorced her violent husband, but went to rate shortly afterwards, where he was once again sentenced for multiple thefts and received another 2 years of prison. Early in 1903, he was in contact with a former classmate named Elizabeth Brenner of Dusseldorf, and this is when he was expelled by the Brenners. He terrorized the whole family by smashing windows with rocks and an axe, and also firing multiple shots at the father in the house. So, once again, he was sentenced to a year and 3 weeks in prison. He again went to his mother for a short time, but soon afterwards, Miss M took him in again, and he made his living through burglaries.
I feel like he should realize at this point he doesn't really have a knack for that.
In the summer of 1904, Peter was drafted into the Imperial German Army, but was able to run away. I don't know how, but I also feel like it was pretty easy. Like lots of people were going like AWOL around that time.
And, like, it seems like it would have been easy to, like, kinda, like, change your identity back then with, like, less
Yeah.
technology.
Yeah. That fall, he began committing arsons. He would watch from a distance as emergency services attempted to put out the fires, and the majority of these fires were in barns and haylofts. He was caught and arrested on New Year's Eve, and he admitted to police that he was responsible for 24 fires.
Why would you admit that?
I People like to brag. Peter had a military trial where he was found guilty of desertion along with several counts of arson, robbery, and attempted robbery for crimes he committed that same year. He ended up serving time in prison from 1905 to 1913 in Munster. Big fan of their cheese. I love Munster cheese.
Never heard of it.
It's so creamy. Oh my god. So, with much of his time spent in solitary confinement for repeated instances of insubordination, which solitary confinement really does take a toll on you, but like he already has problems as it is, so I can only imagine. After serving the sentence, he once again lived with his mother, and sometimes he also stayed in a rented apartment, still continuing to amass more offenses. Are we surprised? No. He also was shooting at guests and a guard after molesting a woman at an inn. He served another 6 months. So, during a burglary on May 18th, 1913, he heavily mistreated a 16-year-old. He was able to escape undetected though. On the 25th of May in 1913, Peter Kürten broke into an innkeeper's apartment in, I'm pretty sure it's called Mulheim.
You gotta say it in the German accent, too.
I don't know how. My accents are horrible. The only one I can kind of do
You cannot do a Boston one or Italian.
No. In Mulheim am Rhein, intending to rob it. That's until he encountered a 9-year-old girl named Christine Klein asleep in her bed. He strangled her, cut her throat with a pocket knife, and locked the door and left. This all happened while her parents worked in their pub below her bedroom,
Oh.
and her mother found her just a couple minutes after. There were no fingerprints found at the crime scene, but Peter had left behind a bloodstained handkerchief marked with his initials. The next day, Peter returned to the area and visited a tavern across the street from the murder scene and this was so he could listen to the locals' reactions to the child's murder. Investigations concentrated on her father, Peter Klein, and this is due to the handkerchief initials because PK, Peter Kürten, PK, Peter Klein. After her father was able to prove his innocence, investigations quickly shifted towards her uncle Otto, because a witness saw someone with a similar suit that he had leave the house around that time. There was also an inheritance dispute in the family, which was a plausible cause for motive. The charge was dropped, though, due to lack of evidence, and Otto Klein died 2 years later in Russia during World War I without ever fully clearing his name.
Damn.
Um, Following multiple assaults and arsons, which he was able to escape undetected, Peter was charged for multiple thefts yet again and sentenced to another 6 years in prison. Why do they keep letting this man out?
How old is he at this point?
Followed by 2 more years because he was involved in a rebellion inside the prison, and he was released again in 1921 when he was 38. So he like 30s. I don't know. That's not what I'm doing in my 30s.
Heavens no, I'm gonna be reading and mastering bread, not arson. That sounds like too much.
Taking Tylenol for my back pain.
Literally, like, leaving the house after 8?
I'm
Heavens
in
no.
bed by 9 o'clock.
Yeah, jammy. I'm in my jammies right now. Like,
Yeah.
I'm already done for the day.
So he was released again in 1921 because clearly nothing says, let's give this man another shot, like arson, assault, and attempted murder. So after his release in 1921, he went to stay with his sister in the small town of Oldenburg. There he met his future wife, Augusta Scharf. She was a former sex worker who herself had spent 4 years in jail for shooting her fiance to death after he had left her at the altar. 2 years later, Peter and Augusta married. For the first time in his life, Peter obtained regular employment. So at least he kind of tried, I suppose. But with the exception of his wife, he didn't form any close friendships. And in 1925, they both moved back to Dusseldorf.
Düsseldorf Evil Incorporated.
Peter found his self-control slipping away, and in the summer of 1925, he assaulted 2 maids after gaining their trust with forged papers in which he made himself 10 years younger with a higher paying job.
You know, when my self-control slips away, it's over like a pan of brownies.
Yeah.
I feel like that's pretty.
Mine's with trinkets and things that are sparkly. His wife found out and the women pressed charges. During the investigations, however, he wasn't convicted for rape, but still had to serve 8 months in prison for forging documents. Peter only served 6 months of the sentence. His early release was under the condition of him leaving Dusseldorf. So he became free yet again in October 1928. Peter decided this time he was going to up his murder game and go on a killing spree. From February 1928 to November 1929, he killed a total of 8 people between February of 1929 and his final arrest in May 1930. He committed more than 20 assaults, most of them with the intent to kill. On February 3rd, 1929, Peter Kürten stalked a middle-aged woman named Apollonia Kuhn, and he waited until she was hidden from view of others behind some bushes and attacked her. He started stabbing her repeatedly with a pair of scissors. He stabbed her so violently that a part of the scissors broke off and got stuck in her head. Believing he had killed her, he went and hid somewhere. She fucking survived, though. Peter wasn't convicted for the crime, though, because a mentally ill person named Johann Statsberg confessed to the crime after he was arrested for assaulting 2 women with a noose. On February 9th, Peter was out and about, this time carrying a larger pair of scissors, known as imperial scissors. So like big, hefty scissors. When he came across 9-year-old Rosa Ollinger, who was lost. He offered to walk her home and she agreed. but just steps away from his own home, he brutally stabbed her multiple times, killing her. The area where he left her body was near a construction site and it was dimly lit, out of sight, so he casually just went home, cleaned himself up, and used a free movie ticket to go watch a movie.
How do you get the satisfaction out of killing a kid like that?
I don't know.
Just this tiny, defenseless little thing and doing that to him?
Mhm. And then just having, like, the casualness of just, like, going to watch a movie after. Later that evening, he came back to the scene carrying a bottle of kerosene and planning to set the body on fire. But since there were too many people nearby, he stashed the bottle and waited. Early the next morning, he returned once more and finally burned Rosa's body. It was construction workers who eventually discovered her remains. And as if this case couldn't get any more absurd, yet again, Johann ended up confessing to the crime. 5 days later, on the 13th of February, Peter murdered a 45-year-old mechanic named Rudolf Scheer. Peter had stabbed him 20 times and even unsuccessfully tried to drink some of the escaping blood. Afterwards, he pushed him down an embankment. Rudolph's body was found the following day, and Peter actually returned to the scene of the crime to talk with police, falsely informing one detective that he had heard about the murder through a phone call. In July 1929, he frequently strolled around the zoo district, chatting it up with various women, and on one occasion he spotted someone he considered a potential victim, but his wife happened to appear at the same time. So
Crazy, he's still married.
he's with his wife and he is like actively looking for women to kill. Awkward and panicked, Peter, his scissors in his pocket, bolted, leaving both women behind. Another
That's
time,
totally not suspicious.
another time he convinced a woman to join him at the fair. However, on their way back, he tried to strangle her. Thankfully, she managed to escape before he can escalate. On August 8th, Peter met Maria Hahn and planned a trip with her for a few days. On August 11th, they went on a long hike together, stopping at several restaurants along the way. On the way back, he led her to a secluded spot. At first, he acted sweet, but things took a dark turn when he began strangling her and eventually stabbed her to death. He even attempted to drink her blood, but ended up vomiting it. Afterward, he placed her body in a drainage ditch and went home. His wife grew suspicious when she noticed his bloody, dirty clothes, but Peter had excuses ready to cover his tracks. Worried he might be linked to the murder, he returned to the scene that evening and dug a grave nearby to hide the body. Although his wife noticed his absence, he managed to calm her suspicions with more excuses. Um, so I don't know how you just.
I just want to know the excuse he gave her when he seen her in the park and then
Yeah,
darted from her.
yeah, and then he comes home covered in blood and his clothes are all dirty. I don't know. So over the next few days, he kept visiting the grave. At first, it was to better conceal it, and later it was for his own disturbing satisfaction. On August 20th, Peter went to the fair in Lahrenfeld carrying a dagger. Um, I guess scissors weren't enough. So throughout the evening, he tried approaching several women but had no success. Around 2 a.m., he followed two girls who were headed home. After one of them reached her house, he continued trailing the 18-year-old named Anna Goldhausen and eventually stabbed her in the back. Fortunately, she managed to escape and ran back to her friend, who quickly opened the door for her, forcing him to flee. About 15 minutes later, he targeted 31-year-old Olga Mantle. Though she initially avoided him, Peter chased her down and stabbed her multiple times in the back. Her screams alerted a nearby factory gatekeeper who tried to pursue Peter but lost him shortly after. While fleeing, he attacked another man, 30-year-old Heinrich Kornblum, stabbing him in the back near the fairground. Kornblum also managed to escape and sought help at the fairground where he received first aid. Peter lingered at the fairground, soaking in the chaotic atmosphere, and even returned to the scene of his second attack. Standing among a crowd of onlookers, he watched as the severely injured Olga Mantle was taken away. Both Mantle and Goldhausen later provided descriptions of Peter, but they didn't lead to his capture, which I think is crazy.
But, like, also to be fair, looking at the picture of him, he looks like many German men back then.
Right, but, like well, I guess that he's also not, like, in
L
the same city as he committed all his other crimes. Just 4 days later, Peter was back on the hunt for victims, this time near the central station. After failing to approach anyone, he took a tram to Flé,
eh,
where he, oh my gosh, where a festival called you're never gonna guess what this is about. It's called Schützenfest. What do you think it is?
Schützenfest?
Yeah, Schützenfest.
Shoes?
Shooting.
Oh,
It's a shooting festival.
Schützenfest?
I have no idea how to do a German accent, but I'm gonna give yours a 10 out of 10.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So, once again, his attempts to engage with women were unsuccessful, so he settled for watching the fireworks. Later that evening, he noticed two young girls leaving the festival. 13-year-old Louise Lenzen and 5-year-old Gertrude Amacher, and decided to follow them. He struck up a conversation and asked the older girl to fetch him some cigarettes because apparently a 13-year-old can buy cigarettes at this time.
Yeah, I think they
Um,
were allowed to drink beer too.
oh yeah, I did forget that Germany you can drink beer at 16.
But to be fair, I think
In
over here too,
Germany.
you were allowed to buy them early on. Also, I think our grandparents and great-grandparents were buying cigarettes at, like, 5
Yeah,
too,
probably.
like, over here. It was pretty
Mhm.
normal.
I mean, even in the 70s, I feel like people would just send their kids to buy cigarettes.
Yeah, that's why so many dads weren't able to leave because their kids could just go to the store and get them
Yeah.
cigarettes. They had no excuse to go to the store at 2 AM.
Yeah, they raised the age of buying cigarettes and suddenly everyone's dad disappeared. That's what did it. Um, so while she was away, Peter had strangled the 5-year-old until she lost consciousness and carried her to a nearby bean field and slit her throat.
Okay.
When the older girl returned, he attacked her as well, strangling her and dragged her into another field, and she managed to fight back and briefly escape, but Peter had caught up to her and stabbed her multiple times. He left both bodies in the field and returned home. The next morning, their bodies were discovered. The morning after the crime, he returned to the area near the scene, soaking up the commotion caused by the discovery of the bodies, and later he went to Oberkassel and struck up a conversation with a 26-year-old named Gertrude Schult. Using a fake name and age, he pretended to be a postal worker and managed to convince her to join him at the fair. They didn't stay long, and on their way back, Peter led her down a different path near the Rhine. Trusting him, Schult followed, unaware of his intentions. And once they got to the meadows, he sexually assaulted her, and when she tried to defend herself, he stabbed her. During the attack, the tip of his dagger broke off and became lodged in her vertebrae, and her cries for help attracted the attention of nearby teenagers, prompting Peter to flee. He discarded the broken dagger as he ran, and despite her severe injuries, Gertrude survived.
That is so crazy that back when, like, because I imagine that, like, the medical, like,
Mhm.
knowledge wasn't
Yeah.
that great still, and the fact that so many people like, the
Yeah.
lady with the scissors in the skull survived
Mhm.
too, like, that's crazy.
Insane. Over the next few days, Peter frequently visited Maria Hahn's grave. However, by September, he lost interest and his thoughts shifted to imagining the chaos that would unfold once her body was discovered. Because remember, he buried her body, and then gaslit the fuck out of his wife. He decided to create a detailed sketch of the grave, and at the end of September, he placed the sketch in the mailbox of the Düsseldorfer Stadtanzeiger.
Or
No,
Staffengeiser,
Stadtanzeiger.
Steniger,
Anzeiger.
Stanson Tiger,
Standing tiger.
Staten Island.
Okay. The Düsseldorf wait, did I already say publishing house?
Nope.
Oh, oops, okay. The Düsseldorfer Stadtanzeiger publishing house. So, it's a newspaper. They never reported on it though, and they don't know if the,
I mean, to be fair, if you just got a random
yeah,
doodle of a
mhm.
grave, like, with no description, what are you gonna do with that?
Exactly.
Maybe
"We
if you put,
received this in
like
a mailbox."
yeah, like, maybe, like, if they like, if, Peter had been like, "Here is grave of so
Yeah,
and so," like, then
right.
they would've, but,
Mhm.
like
They don't really know, like, what happened to the sketch either. It kinda
I mean, you think it just get crumbled up and thrown away probably.
Probably. So on September 29th, Peter was back at Dusseldorf Central Station, this time armed with a hammer. He approached a 31-year-old named Ida Reuter, and they both took a long walk along the Rhine Dam near the spot where he had attacked Gertrude Schult a month earlier. When Ida insisted on heading back because it was getting late, he agreed, but shortly after, he struck her on the head with a hammer. He dragged her unconscious body to the meadow and killed her with several hits with the hammer and began dragging her by the feet, intending to sink her into the river. However, when a man with a dog approached, Peter abandoned his plan and fled home. The man was a police officer on patrol. They didn't fucking notice him. Ida's body was discovered the next morning. He returned to the crime scene once again, blending into the crowd, and to watch the police and onlookers in their investigation. On the evening of October 11th, Peter went downtown, once again armed with a hammer, and he met 22-year-old Elizabeth Doyer. And after spending some time at a brewery, she agreed to go to his apartment. However, on the way, he suddenly attacked her, striking her with the hammer and dragging her into a bush. While continuing to hit her, he also sexually assaulted her. Believing she was dead, he left, taking her coat, hat, and purse, which later he discarded on his way home. Elizabeth was found unconscious the next morning and rushed to the hospital, but she passed away 36 hours later without ever regaining consciousness. 2 days later, Peter returned to the scene of the crime and encountered a police officer with a smelling dog looking for evidence. He even pointed out the discarded clothes and purse, but the officer didn't suspect him. That same evening, he created another sketch of Maria Hahn's grave and sent it to the Dusseldorf Police Administration. However, the sketch was too vague and Maria's body remained undiscovered. On October 25th, Peter ventured out into the early evening armed with, yet again, a hammer. After failing to approach several young girls, he met 34-year-old Hubertine Muir. The two went for a walk again and chatted about various topics, including the murder of Rudolf Scheer, which had occurred nearby months earlier. Sensing that Hubertine was growing suspicious, Peter struck her with the hammer and continued to hit her as she laid on the ground. Despite her screams for help, he suddenly decided to flee without killing her. Later that night, near the central station, he encountered Clara Vonders, and she was a sex worker. So he pretended to be interested and followed her for a while before attacking her. After striking her multiple times with the hammer, one particularly heavy blow left her unconscious and caused the hammer to break in two. How the fuck is this hammer breaking in half?
Literally.
I've never broken a hammer in my life. And I feel like tools back then were really sturdy.
Yeah.
And now they're just like put together with glue.
Like, I bought tools from Dollar Tree and not broke them.
He briefly searched for the missing piece of the hammer, but eventually fled, discarding the remaining part along the way. Clara regained consciousness and called for help, but Peter once again managed to escape undetected. On November 7th, he was once again searching for a victim, this time armed with imperial scissors. Near a church, he came across 5-year-old Gertrude Alberman, who was outside playing at her aunt's house. Using his friendly demeanor, he convinced her to walk with him. 2 passing workers saw them but assumed it was just a father and daughter out on a stroll, so they didn't intervene. Peter led Gertrude to a secluded area in some allotment gardens where he strangled her until she lost consciousness. Once hidden, he stabbed her with the scissors and attempted to drink her blood. Afterward, he raped her and continued stabbing her until she died, and her body was left in a bush. And he calmly walked home like nothing happened.
He really was extra with that one.
Yeah. And she was so young too.
Yeah.
5. The next day, he created another sketch of Maria Hahn's gravesite, this time sending it to the Düsseldorf newspaper. It was called Die Freiheit, and it is, in English, it stands for the freedom. So I guess he's just like 3 times a charm. This sketch also included a clue where to find Gertrude Obermann's body. By then, the police had already discovered her remains and took the sketch seriously, believing it indicated another hidden body, which it was. After several days of searching, they finally located Maria Hahn's grave on November 15th. Handwriting analysis revealed that the same person who had anonymously informed the police in a letter dated October 14th, claiming responsibility for Hahn's murder and describing her burial at the edge of the woods, was also behind the two other letters. These letters were sent to newspapers and police, and they detailed Peter's crimes and threatened further attacks. A graphologist confirmed that all three letters were written by the same person. This led Ernst Gannat, the chief inspector of the Berlin police, to conclude that one man was responsible for most, if not all, of the recent assaults and murders. Also, Ernest is he's really fucking good. He's well known for being a really good police officer and investigator. Over the next 4 months, Peter kept a relatively low profile, committing only 3 assaults where he choked women. In one instance, during consensual intercourse, the woman asked why he was choking her, and he claimed it was his way of showing love. A follow-up meeting was planned for a week later, but it was interrupted when his wife unexpectedly returned home early. On April 30th, 1930, he attacked domestic worker Charlotte Ulrich with a hammer, striking her multiple times on the head and leaving her for dead. Moments later, he returned to ensure she was dead, but by then, Charlotte had managed to escape. Also in April, though the exact date isn't known, Peter met a young woman who was a widow named, there's no first name, it's just her last name. And it's Kurtzinger. Introducing himself as a bachelor looking to marry, he visited her several times over the following days, and he intended to murder her and her children.
Okay.
But her relatives were always present, preventing him from carrying out his plans before his arrest. On May 14th, 1930, Maria Budlik, a 20-year-old woman, arrived at Düsseldorf station from Köln and looking for a place to stay and work. An unknown man approached her and offered to guide her to a local hostel. She agreed but grew uneasy when he tried to lead her through a quiet park. The two began arguing, and another man intervened, asking if Maria was being bothered. When she nodded, the first man walked away. The man who stepped in
No.
was Peter Kürten.
No.
He invited Maria to his apartment for food and drinks. Sensing his ulterior motives, she made it clear she was not interested in sex. He calmly agreed, offered to take her to a hotel, but instead led her to Grafenberg Woods, where he grabbed her by the throat and attempted to strangle her while raping her. When Maria screamed, Peter let go and allowed her to leave. Maria did not report the assault to police, but wrote about it in a letter to a friend. The letter was incorrectly addressed and opened by a postal clerk on May 19th, and it was forwarded to the Düsseldorf police. Which, why the fuck are you opening mail? Isn't
And
that a
reading the whole
crime?
letter. Maybe if it started out with, this day I was raped, but, imagine it's, 2 pages in and this person's just reading this
Yeah.
entire letter.
We can just I'm glad they looked at it, but that's a crime. Maybe it wasn't a crime back then. Maybe they
Yeah.
were just cool with it. So, Chief Inspector Gannat read the letter and suspected Budlik's attacker might be the Dusseldorf murderer. Gannat was actually in charge of a special task force, and he interviewed Maria, who revealed Peter had spared her partly because she claimed she couldn't remember his address. She agreed to lead the police to his apartment, though, because she actually fucking remembered. Thank God. When they arrived, the landlady confirmed that Peter lived there, but he wasn't home. Peter spotted them in the hallway though and fled. I don't know if she intentionally lied or if he just happened to show up in time. Um, but realizing the police knew his identity, he confessed to his wife that he had raped Maria Budlik and feared he might face 15 years of penal labor due to his past convictions. You know, those 57 times he was arrested earlier?
Literally.
With her consent, he stayed in temporary lodgings in Dusseldorf's Adlerstrasse district until May 23rd. Upon returning home, Peter admitted to his wife that he was the vampire of Dusseldorf and urged her to claim the reward for his capture. The next day, Augusta Kürten informed the police. She explained she had known about his criminal past, but she was unaware of his involvement in the murders. She added that Peter was willing to confess and had arranged to meet her outside of St. Rocca's Church later that day. Peter was arrested at gunpoint that afternoon. On May 24th, 1930, he openly confessed to all the crimes attributed to the vampire of Dusseldorf, including the unsolved murder of Christine Klein and the attempted murder of Gertrude Franken in 1913. In total, he admitted to 68 crimes,
Jesus.
including 9 murders and 31 attempted murders. Some crimes he admitted to weren't even crimes that he committed, though, so I guess he was taking a page out of Johann's book. Just started
Just
confessing to
racking
shit.
them on.
Yeah. He didn't excuse his actions, but claimed they were fueled by the injustices he believed he had suffered throughout his life.
Nothing quite like
That's an
taking out
excuse.
injustices on 5-year-olds, though.
Yeah. Peter insisted he hadn't tortured any child victims, but he raped them. But described drinking
And strangled
blood.
them to death.
Yeah. Um, but described drinking blood from several victims and even from a swan he decapitated.
Not the swan.
Yeah. The 13th of April, 1931, Peter stood trial in Dusseldorf. He was charged with 9 counts of murder and 7 of attempted murder. Peter pleaded not guilty by reason of insanity to every charge. They actually built him an iron cage that he had to be kept in because they feared he would escape. That reminds me of like the cage Hannibal Lecter was in.
Also, quick question. Why was he given the name the Vampire of Dusseldorf?
Because he drank their blood.
But was that before he admitted to it?
I think it was because
how did they know that he tried drinking their blood? Like afterwards, I guess it made sense to be like the Vampire of Dusseldorf, but before when he didn't I was
there was, like,
expecting
smearing or something. I don't know.
because I was expecting like the bodies to be like drained or
Yeah.
something, and he didn't even do it to everyone.
Right.
But okay. I was just wondering.
A couple of them. The trial lasted 10 days, and on April 22nd, the jury deliberated for only 2 hours. Before agreeing on a verdict, Peter was found guilty and sentenced to death on 9 counts of murder. He was also found guilty of 7 counts of attempted murder. On July 1st, 1931, Peter received his last meal. Do you want to guess what he ordered? A
Something with
very
jelly.
German food. Huh?
I don't know, something with jelly in it.
No.
Like a jellied bean.
No, I feel like that was an American thing. I feel like we were the only crazy ones jelloing everything.
Well, all the women were high.
It's literally on cocaine. Yeah.
I'm trying to think of a
And LSD.
Schnitzel?
Yes.
Really?
Yes. He ordered a wiener schnitzel, a bottle of white wine, and fried potatoes.
Hell yeah, with the fried taters, though.
He ate the entire meal and even got a second helping. On July 2nd, shortly before his head was placed on the guillotine, Kürten turned to the prison psychiatrist and asked the questions. Tell me, after my head is chopped off, will I still be able to hear, at least for a moment, the sound of my own blood gushing from the stump of my neck? That would be the pleasure to end all pleasures.
I wouldn't let him hear it then.
Then, at 6 a.m., he was beheaded via guillotine, and afterwards his head was bisected and mummified, and the brain was removed and subjected to forensic analysis in an attempt to explain his behavior and personality. The examinations of his brain revealed no abnormalities, though. His head is actually on display. It can be found in Ripley's Believe It or Not museum in Wisconsin Dells, and they actually have other murderer display thingies there. His head is on a chain, which I don't love. And it just like rotates. So I apologize to my friend, who is from Germany, who suggested I do this and helped me with my research on this. I'm so sorry if I pronounce anything wrong, but to be fair, it's your fault for suggesting this to me.
Thanks for listening.
If you enjoyed this episode, you can find us on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, and Facebook at Paranoia Pair Pod, and we will see you next Friday.
Stay spooky.
Okay. Goodbye.
Goodbye.